Hey everybody. I promise we will have more time for networking and chatting afterward. I promise, because that's the best part. And I see some of my students here, so good thing you're here. And afterward, you need to shake hands with the community members because these are the people that are going to give you your next career, right? Or connect you with the person who's going to give you your next career. So thank you for coming and getting yourselves out here. I'm Cynthia West, and I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship here at Chapman. And the Dean of the Argyros College of School and Business, Henrik Cronquist, is here. So I would say hi to him. So we have Henrik to thank for giving me this job in June. And we're super excited to have you all here today. And anybody who knows me knows that I like to kind of kick off these events with some questions. So here's the question. Who do you think our #2 employer here at Chapman is, of Chapman graduates? It's a new question. It's not the same old question. Anybody know? #2? It's Disney. It's Disney. And so we also have the #4 film school in all of the United States with the Dodge Film School. So we hope that, Dodge! All right, thank you for being here. Awesome. This is what we were hoping. Okay. So we're super excited to talk today about the convergence of AI, the state of AI, and we also were blessed this morning with one of our speakers from Lightstorm was going to be on Zoom only, but is actually here in the flesh. So we're super excited to have Tim Bicio here. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Clarence. Come on up to the stairs. This makes it easier. I'm going to introduce you to Clarence Fields from Dell Technologies, who will then introduce our speakers.
Thank you. Hi. Well, hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you today. Dell, as one of the global leaders in bringing solutions to the marketplace that accelerates human progress, we're really excited to partner with Chapman University and the Leatherby Center. I'm excited to introduce today's guest presenters. We have Craig Allen, who's the AI solutions architect and part of our data science platform team. We have Jon McKim, who's the advisory systems engineer in our AI division as well. And as Dr. West shared, we have Tim Bicio, who's the CTO of Lightstorm Entertainment. So really excited for today. Please ask lots of questions. And thank you again to the Leatherby Center at Chapman University for partnering with us for today's forum. So, thank you.
Hey. So I'm Craig. I'm going to go first, and I have a presentation. I don't want to do that by PowerPoint. We're all here together, so feel free to interrupt, raise your hand, ask questions. I want this to be interactive. I know we're all sick of Zoom, so it's nice to see this many people in the flesh. Right? You're not avatars anymore, this world of AI is really interesting. It's changing really fast. I mean, it's like exponentially changing fast. And so there's a few things I wanted to talk about. What is it? What can you use it for? But more importantly, how can we do it responsibly? So the topic of responsible AI is huge, especially in such verticals, especially the creative verticals. Can you accidentally get yourself in trouble? Right, this whole concept of intellectual property, and this is a topic that's been ongoing, but AI just kind of exacerbates that problem when you're using a system that can synthesize net new content. There's all these questions: do you own that content? Are you liable for that content? What if you cause harm? What if the AI causes harm? So there's this topic of responsibility that I'm going to cover. So make sure everything works here. And it's not going to work. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, hello everyone. It's Jon McKim. I come from a data science background, so more of a practitioner in the space. Craig's been talking about kind of what he's seeing out in the field from an organizational perspective. I'm going to talk about kind of how you can apply this in your own life, right? How to use AI for your personal productivity and ways to get along in space.
So a little bit about myself, and maybe we'll get PowerPoints to help here. If not, we don't do PowerPoint. So again, my name is Craig Allen. I'm an AI specialist here at Dell, and I've been with Dell for about 13 years. I was with Microsoft prior to that, but then I was in corporate IT for a long time. So John and I did a podcast earlier, and they asked us about our background, and I'm an old timer. They asked, one of the questions is, Craig, are you a boomer? And I was like, oh, man, I'm right on the corner of being a boomer. Don't call me a boomer. I'm an elder Gen X. But that's I'm an old timer Gen X, right? So my parents are boomers, right? So I'm not a boomer. It's like, okay, boomer. I've been in the industry for a long time. So my first job was in '84. It was with Radio Shack. And if anyone knows who Radio Shack was, right? Hey, you know what a trash 80 is? Yeah, I work on trash 80s. Right. So this is back at the very beginning of the PC revolution, right? So IBM comes out with the PC, Compaq reverse engineers it, and then off to the races. And Michael Dell starts Dell out of his dorm room at UT. So Michael Dell, he's at UT, he's in his dorm room, he takes $1,000, and I think it's an 83 or 84, and he starts to build clones. And this is the whole clone. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the word clones before, but IBM came out with the PC, and then you kind of legally reverse engineer it. And so Michael starts his company in '83 with $1,000 out of his dorm room, and now he's worth $78 billion, right? He's like in the top 10 of the richest in the world. But Michael is different than some of these other tech leaders that we see. One thing that you'll notice about Michael is he is very ethical, and he runs a very tight ethical ship. So I've worked for many companies, and working for Dell is ethics is at the top of everything that we do. Integrity and ethics. So this is something that us as employees, we ingrain in ourselves, but I think everyone has a responsibility to be ethical and have integrity. And when we're using something like AI, and AI can definitely cause harm. There's definitely the misuse of AI, and this is some of the biggest threats that we have, is how always keep that ethical mindset is, am I doing so what's the definition of ethics? Is knowing that you have the right to do something, but is doing that right? Yeah, is it something that's ethical? So I think that's really the core theme that we have around AI. That's a little bit about myself, John. You want to talk about your background?
Yeah, so like I'm a data science practitioner. I worked with a lot of media and entertainment companies, Los Angeles area. Familiar with the DC Universe platform at Warner Brothers. That's kind of the precursor to HBO Max. I worked on analytics, also analytic platforms at AT&T and other companies like that. So I have to share my experiences with media and entertainment and its explosion of LLMs and how that can be applied to those fields. Right. So work on PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Is there an IT guy in the room?
Someone push the button. Okay. So there's a lot of hype around AI, and you know it's going to take over the world. It's Terminator, right? We're all going to lose our jobs, and we're all going to be slaves to the AI. And you know that's interesting. But what's the reality? What's the reality on the ground today? So first of all, there's a lot of fear. So there's a lot of hype, which generates uncertainty, which generates fear. And so don't be fearful of AI. I know my parents are like, oh my God, what's this? Is it Terminator, right? I think we've been prepped mentally by the movies that, you know, it's going to take over the world. Anyone seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson? talking about a movie that was made 10 years ago that really forecasted, that was before Alexa, right? And you had this AI that was a very intelligent AI. And I think that's more of a promising view of the future other than the ending of that movie where the guy falls in love with his laptop. So if you haven't seen the movie, I'm not going to give it away, but it's a good movie. So another thing is be skeptical. You hear news, you see reports, and think about the source of that news. If it's coming from a particular company, well, what's the agenda of that company? If it's coming from a Google or a Microsoft or an Amazon, they have an agenda. So understand, be skeptical of what you hear. So do your own research. We all have to be responsible for what we know. We can't expect our knowledge to be spoon-fed to us. We all have to be inquisitive. We all need to do our own research. And the other thing, I deal with a lot of companies around AI, and they're always focused on the technology. How are we going to do this? GPUs and models and all this stuff. But more importantly is, what are you going to use it for? What problem are you trying to solve with AI? So whether that's in healthcare or manufacturing or in the creative space, what problem are you trying to solve? And is AI the appropriate tool to solve that? And lastly, be responsible, keep that ethical mindset. And it's not magic, it's just math. If you understand how AI actually works in these deep neural networks, it's just math. And so these systems don't think, they infer. It's called inferencing, because it's inferring a result. You put these input values at the front end of a model, it goes through a bunch of linear algebra and ultimately ends up at a piece of data that it mathematically and statistically thinks that's the answer. But that could be wrong. It's called a hallucination. And so some of these models are in the 80 to 90% accuracy range, which sounds pretty good unless you're dealing with money or healthcare. And is it okay to be wrong 1 out of 5 times when you're dealing with the patient? Right? So accuracy matters. And so we're gravitating to these larger and larger and larger models that are kind of jack of all trades, that can do everything, but the accuracy is going down. And so really think about the use case. What are you going to use it for? And what is the accuracy? If you're just trying to generate a picture or some video, maybe accuracy doesn't matter. If you're trying to diagnose a patient or deal with money, accuracy really matters. All right, here we go. So there's a lot of benefit to AI. So there's a lot of businesses are really going to get a lot of benefit out of AI, but how's that benefit going to be realized? One is efficiencies. So you have human-based processes today. So you've got human error, you've got a lot of people involved in the process. It may be hard, it may be long, it may be difficult process. If you can create an assistant that can help you do the mundane, redundant task, and then elevate the humans to do what humans do best, which is create. So let the humans be the creators, let the robots do all the boring stuff underneath, right? And that's kind of the AI being an assistant. Do we want AIs making decisions right now? I don't think we're there. I don't think we have the accuracy. I don't think we have the morality built into the models, the controls built into the models to have an AI make a decision. Can it inform a human? Yes. Does the human have to be skeptical of what the AI is bringing to the table? Absolutely. But from a personal productivity, that back to that movie Her, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's really interesting when you have, and Microsoft's coming out with Copilot, they have Copilot, and you may or may not have access to it yet, but inside your Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, you're gonna have an AI. And if you use Excel, creating a pivot table and creating some charts is always kind of been a pain. Now you can just talk to Excel and say, create me a pivot table, and it will create a pivot table. So that's Copilot from Microsoft. If you're a coder and you're out on GitHub, there's GitHub Copilot, which can help you write code. Now, Do you have to be skeptical of the code it wrote? Yes. Are you ultimately responsible for the code that it wrote? Yes. But did it get the semicolon? Did it get the semicolon and the bracket in the right spot? Yes, right. So there's a lot of benefit to AI, but there's also a lot of challenges. And I can't see the screen here. One of those is technical problems. So in the space of AI, it takes a lot of horsepower to get this stuff created. Microphones are like the worst. But it takes a lot of horsepower, and horsepower equates to money. Yeah. Horsepower equates to money. And so the money being spent and the money being invested is huge. So these corporations have to get a return on their investment. If you're going to go drop a few $1 million or $100 million, or I'm dealing with some deals that are approaching $1 billion in AI, you better have a good return for that investment. And it's not a 1-for-1 return. You've got to have like a 10x return. So there's really got to be a reason to go invest this kind of money. Now we have an arms race. We have Intel, we have AMD, we have NVIDIA. These companies are in an arms race about getting your dollar for AI. Now all the cloud providers, the Microsofts, the Googles, and the Amazons, they have the services, and Dell we have services, but ultimately that has to run on some hardware somewhere. And these companies are in an arms race to get your dollar for their hardware. And so we're seeing this vendor lock-in. If you go down the NVIDIA route, you kind of start writing code to certain APIs and you're locked in. So John will talk about closed source versus open source. So do we have any developers in the room, people who write code? Anyone write code? Yeah. And so you know that APIs are kind of the keys to the kingdom, and right to certain APIs, you can lock yourself into a particular stack. And so there's so many layers to this cake, right? So a lot of you guys say, hey, Craig, I don't care about this hardware, I don't care about the code, I just want to use it. But there are technical challenges today. The other thing is this AI is only as good as the data that you feed it. And so it is truly a garbage in and garbage out situation. We've talked about garbage in and garbage out for a long time, but if you have a database, you can go query it, you can find a piece of information, you can update that information. But these neural networks, once they learn something, it's very hard for it to unlearn it because it's mimicking the human mind essentially, right? Once the pathways are established, it's hard to, unless you go back in time and retrain, it's hard for it to unlearn something. So the data that you feed AI really is the key to making AI successful. I deal with a lot of data science teams, a lot of data scientists, and they live in these research labs. And they can get things to work in the lab and doing their science experiments, but then translating that to the real world, to production, to solve production problems for the business. Usually there's a big translation from what worked in the lab and what works in reality, and there's a big gap. And so we spend a lot of time trying to get data scientists and data science teams to say, what is the end goal? What are we really trying to accomplish? Whether that's in a particular vertical or it's a horizontal use case, but trying to, because ultimately you have to get out of the science experiment. You have to get out of the lab and you have to actually produce something that's valuable. There's a bunch of ethical considerations. One of these is fear around the workforce. Is AI going to take all our jobs? Well, there are certain roles that are going to disappear. I went through a fast food restaurant the other day and went through the drive-thru, and I talked to an AI to make my order. Did I have to repeat myself 3 times to get the AI to get my order right? Yeah. But they've displaced a worker who normally took your order with an AI. Is it a good user experience? It wasn't a good user experience for me, but there's a worker that was displaced. So there's definitely going to be a disruption in the workforce. So those who understand AI and can leverage AI, you don't have to be a developer, you don't have to be a data scientist, but are you familiar with the tools and how these tools work and the uses that they can do? Those are going to be the jobs of the future, and the jobs of the past who don't use AI or familiar with AI are going to be phased out. But it's a concern, especially around task-based workers. Lastly is we need policy and regulations, and policy and regulation is coming really quickly, right? We're seeing regulations all over the place. And it is somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction from our politicians that we're over-rotating on stifling innovation through regulation. And that's gonna come, there needs to be a balance between enabling innovation and doing it safely. But there's definitely criminal usage of AI right now. And there's quite a few stories, and there was a story I read around extortion. A man gets a call from an attacker saying, I've kidnapped your daughter. And they put the daughter on the phone, and he has a conversation, and he thinks it's his daughter. Please wire us this money, or something bad's gonna happen. That was an AI. The daughter was an AI. It was not real. It was fake. So there's this technology around AI called continuation of speech, continuation of video. So I saw another demo where a man was speaking, he stopped mid-sentence, and he continued to talk in his own voice, in his own inflection, and it was the AI who continued the conversation. So if you're if you're a criminal, you could use that for not only phishing, but spear phishing and extortion. There's also misdirection, fake news. There's a big concern about the upcoming election, the presidential election. There's a bunch of regulations that are now coming out around using AI to manipulate elections. So the whole Taylor Swift thing that just happened, right? Deep fakes. So think about a deep fake of a politician it's completely false. Maybe it's even the president of the United States. It comes out and it looks real, it tastes real, it smells real, and it's saying a certain thing, and it's debunked 12 hours later that it's completely fake, but it did damage. So AI, in the hands of the wrong person, AI can do a lot of damage. So we're going to have regulations. The US, we're seeing regulations. The EU is going to have regulations, but is China going to have regulations? We're in arms race. We're in a global arms race around AI. And so we have to, as a society, decide how much innovation, how much freedom are we going to allow versus how much controls are we going to put in place. And it's got to be a balancing act, because we could stifle it, we could shut it down. China's not going to. So there's just a ton of questions. We're all at the beginning. Think about a year and a half ago, there wasn't a ChatGPT. No one was talking about AI. And my company has completely turned 180 degrees on AI. We're a multi-billion-dollar company, and now all of a sudden we're all AI experts, which I kind of call bullshit on because we're not. I happen to be an AI engineer. John's a data scientist, and we're just this far ahead of you on trying to figure this crap out, right? So it's an evolving space, but it is here. It is not going away. So genie's out of the bottle. So as your path forward, how could you use AI to further your career, further your personal productivity, right? What are those mundane tasks? What are those outstanding problems in society that AI could be a tool that can be used? And are you in this room going to be the person who goes solves that problem? And it's done through your own education. So there's a few key areas that we're seeing for AI. One is around data and getting data intelligence. So we've done data mining, we've done predictive analytics, but using AI to go through very large repositories of data to try to assist a human in making a better decision. So if in the context of business, you may have a bunch of data, and how can I make a better business decision based on all this data I've had, and maybe I can make some better decisions going forward. I talked about human-based processes and the augmentation of human-based process with AI. A lot of you in this room are in the creative space, so how can you use AI to assist in the creative process? And so John will talk about what OpenAI just released with their text-to-video, and it's kind of an interesting, and that space is evolving really quickly. The other thing is with coding. automated coding or code assistance. And lastly, seeing AI in devices and products, right? The self-driving cars, that kind of thing. But that's what we call the edge. So if you ever hear about the edge, it's like beyond humans, beyond computers, it's devices, it's cameras. It's, we do it today. If you have a Nest thermometer, a thermostat in your house, right? It's got a little bit of an AI. If you have an Alexa, which is really a bad AI, but Amazon needs to do better with that. But this is nothing new. It's just evolving really quickly. I wish, so generative AI, it's right there in the word. So generative AI can generate or synthesize new content. It can generate, you can go out to ChatGPT, hey, write me a poem, right? Or I use ChatGPT. I actually use Copilot from Microsoft, which is married up with ChatGPT to do a bunch of things. Some of the images I created. So if it can synthesize or create net new content, well, then that answers questions. Who owns that content? Do I own that content? If I put in a prompt to create a picture or a video, and I get that, and John puts in the same exact prompt and gets a very similar video, do I own that content? Can I monetize it? If I create a picture with an AI, can I put it in a picture frame and go sell it on the street, saying that's my content, that's my intellectual property? Or is it that intellectual property owned by OpenAI who posted the model, right? And if John puts in the exact same prompt, does he own his copy of the picture and my copy of the picture? And they're very similar, but so the U.S. Copyright Office has an opinion, but I think they need to refine their opinion. Their opinion right now is if a work is partially AI generated, then it can be copyrighted. If it's fully AI generated, it cannot be copyrighted. So now you have to ask yourself, if I put in a prompt and I get a picture, was that fully AI generated? Can that be copyrighted? So the U.S. Copyright Office, they need to refine their ruling. The U.S. Patent Office hasn't generated rules. So there's laws on the books today around works and derivative works and fair use and even some of these tools that you go use, there's contracts and there's indemnification clauses in these contracts. It's a sticky area that you don't want to use someone else's intellectual property inadvertently, right? Because that's their IP. But if you generate work, you don't want someone else using your intellectual property without you being compensated for it. So it's a really kind of a sticky area. It's one thing when a human creates something, it's another thing when a robot creates something. So this world of human process augmentation, and this is kind of a sweet spot right now for AI. It's where you're taking a process, maybe it's employee onboarding, maybe it's customer service, maybe it's product recommendations, but having an AI assist a human in making the human life better. And so, has everyone gone out and played with ChatGPT before? Yeah. And you type in a prompt in text and you get a response in text, and that's engaging. It's only so engaging because those words only mean so much. It's not like talking to a human. So here at Dell, we have got a technology. Her name is Clara. It's a suite of technology. She's an avatar, and the avatar can be different and changed. And so what this is on the back end, there's a large language model, there's an AI, but you can have a conversation with an avatar. The avatar on the back end feeds an AI, a large language model, and gives you, goes through sentiment analysis, and then on the way, the answer coming back to you as a human, the facial expressions, the avatar, how this person looks like, you can have a conversation. So I've got a demo so you can see, hopefully you can hear the audio.
Hi, I'm Olivia, a representative of the New Jersey State Court System. How can I help you today?
Can you tell me where I can find some information about a court case?
Of course, I can help you with that. Do you know the name of the court case or any details about it?
It's a large language model.
Well, actually, can you just tell me what the website is?
Very vague questions.
Yes, the website for the State of New Jersey Court System is www.newjerseycourts.gov. You can find information about court cases, court locations, and
Very
court
fast
rules on the
response.
website.
A lot of
Is
moving
there
gears on
anything
the
else I
back
can help
end.
you with?
Where would I click to find out more information on that website?
To find information about a court case, you can click on the case search tab on the main page of the website. From there, you can search for a case by the case number, the party name, or the attorney name. Is there anything else you need help with?
Here's the interesting part.
Can you repeat that in Spanish for me?
Por supuesto, para encontrar información sobre un caso en la página web de la Corte del Estado de Nueva Jersey, debe hacer clic en la pestaña Búsqueda de casos. Desde aquí, puede buscar un caso por número de caso, nombre de la parte o nombre del abogado. ¿Hay algo más de lo que pueda ayudarle?
And so one thing that AI is really good at is language translation. And so we have some systems, and Claire is one of them. We have a couple other systems where you can talk to an AI in whatever language you speak. And I think there's 130 different languages, dialects that support it. It will auto detect what language you're speaking and what dialect. It can switch the screen, the fonts, the syntax of everything of that user experience to that native language. You can change language mid-sentence from Spanish to German, and the entire system will switch. So it's very engaging. You know, language today divides people. And if we can have this, essentially a battlefish, for those of you that have ever read the book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but having this auto translation, and it happens natively and it happens in real time, I think is a way to bridge societal gaps. So this concept of responsible AI, it's a whole topic in and of itself, but I'm going to kind of speed up here so we give everyone else enough time to speak. But you know, we have all this promise around AI. It's going to make our lives better. It's going to make things more efficient. It's going to make our experiences better. But in the reality, what's standing in the way? What's people, process, technology, and data? This is what companies are dealing with. And people are the biggest gap right now. There's a big, huge gap of talent, AI-educated AI talent to get this stuff done. And it's not just data scientists. It's not just data science teams. It's data, this new term called data wranglers. I imagine a cowboy on a horse with a lasso trying to lasso and wrangle up all the data. So data is king because it's truly garbage in, garbage out. So the quality of the data and the skills gap, that's kind of where we're kind of missing out right now on getting AI really implemented for business use cases. Now, but there's this other area, and I kind of touched on it, intellectual property, ethics, accuracy, bias. This is another area. So the AIs are fed with data. And so you train an AI. But that data that you train the AI on, if it accidentally had some IP in it, and this is OpenAI is finding this out really quickly. Everyone knows who Sarah Silverstone is. She's a comedian. It's probably a Gen X comedian. You guys don't know who she is. Anyway, she goes out to ChatGPT and she says, "Hey, give me a synopsis of this book." It happens to be her book, and ChatGPT spits out her book, page by page, paragraph by paragraph, the entire book. This is not in a database. It's in a large neural network. And so the question is she asked the question, "How did you get my book? Why do you have my book? Where's my royalties? Why are you spitting my book out?" So she filed a class action lawsuit against OpenAI. New York Times comes around and says, "Hey, OpenAI, why do you have every news article we've ever produced? That's our intellectual property. Why are you spitting it out for free?" So now there's another lawsuit against OpenAI. Intellectual property is a huge concern. Another concern is bias. So the data that was that's training these AIs, especially historical data, if you have human-based biases on certain groups, certain patterns, you could feed garbage in these human-based biases into the models will start to emulate and mimic that bias. So think about a hiring process where you have candidates that are vying for a job and the company's using an AI to filter out the applicants for a particular role. You want fairness, you want inclusiveness. And if the model was tainted by historical data that had human-based biases in it, that may not be fair. So the regulations are changing and we're having to disclose, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, about when and where we're using AI for different processes. So regulations. So we now have federal government regulations, and those are going to continue on. We have state level regulations. So now California, Governor Newsom just signed some regulations, which are different than what Greg Abbott signed in Texas, which is different than what they're doing in Florida, which is different than what they're doing in New York. Now New York City has their own regulations, and the EU has their own regulations. So this whole regulatory knee-jerk reaction to AI is stifling innovation and stifling business, because if you go use AI, are you going to get sued? Are you going to get in trouble? You have to really think about, so what's this benefiting? It's supposed to be about safety, and it is about safety and ethics, but it's also about lawyers. So it's a good time to be a lawyer. So being anyone from the law school here, you may want to get into the AI world to become an AI lawyer. That's going to benefit the lawyers. So there's a Spider-Man quote: with great power comes great responsibility. And with AI, there's a ton of power, but there's a ton of potential for harm. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with it. So these areas of fairness, inclusiveness, transparency. So something called explainable AI. So if an AI comes out with a particular answer, how did it come up with that answer? Where was the data that it came with? What was the process? What was the decision making that the AI did to come up with a particular answer? And so transparency is important. So there's all of these areas, and we're seeing anyone from the law school here? So we're seeing contracts being impacted. So inside contracts, there's AI indemnification clauses, and now there's AI disclosure clauses in all of these contracts: business to business, business to supplier, business to customer. So I know that anyone from the law school needs to understand that the litigation around AI is exploding, and so hopefully that doesn't stifle innovation. So there's all of these areas of concern. So as an organization, have an overarching AI strategy. Even here at the university, do you have a strategy around the usage of AI? Any company needs to have a strategy around the usage of AI, including what are the policies, what are the rules of the road, what's a governance model, what's the oversight, and lastly, what's a risk mitigation plan. So if an AI crosses a red line, causes harm, how do we respond to that? We have to anticipate that there's going to be issues, and we have to have a pre-planned mitigation of how, if an AI creates a problem ethically, or if it creates a brand problem, if it leaks proprietary data, how are we going to respond to that? So there's a bunch of uses for AI. So think of the kind of the world's limit on where and how we could use AI, but there's some sweet spots, right? If we've all dealt with chatbots before, right? And we probably all dealt with Alexa, and they're only so engaging. And you go to AT&T, you stand in line to talk to a human to get your phone fixed, right? If you could walk up to a kiosk and have a conversation with an AI, and then that could solve at least 30% of the problems, right? It's a better customer experience, but it's more efficient for the company, and it's money saving. So we can see AI being used all over the place. So I think it's important to think about what can we use it for, not just what is AI, but what are we going to go use it for? What's the problem? What are we trying to solve? What's the opportunity? What's the challenge that we're going to solve with it? And lastly, then we'll think about, well, how do we go about doing it? So in the world of business, we have something called horizontal use cases. And a horizontal use case is something that applies to any company. And it may be employee training, employee onboarding, customer support. There's a bunch of these use cases, and some of these are going to be in the creative space also, but they can apply to any company. And then those are usually the easier problems to solve. And then we get into the very specific use cases. So think of manufacturing, where you have a manufacturing line. Can AI be applied to that? In healthcare, can patient interactions, clinician to clinician interaction, can an AI be used there? It absolutely can. but as long as it's done in a controlled manner. So those vertical use cases are usually the harder ones. If you think about the creative space, that, you know, content creation, digital asset management, right? So if you're a content creator, you have lots and lots of content. How are you going to manage that content? How are you going to share that content? How are you going to be sure you get your royalties on your content if you created it? How are you going to monetize it? And then project workflows. So just in the creative space, I do a lot of video editing on my own, and just the process of editing video, making sure that the clips line up right, the fades, the various clips. If I can use an AI to automate all of that minutia, and then the human does the creative. We need to become, in the creative space, we need to become better storytellers and less video mechanic engineers, right? If we could let an AI do all that grunt work on the bottom, then I can tell a better story. So where to start? Well, those use cases. And the last thing is we talk about is technology. And I come from a technology company. We sell technology. That's all we want to talk about is technology. But more importantly, what are you going to use it for? Okay, let's get forward. So I talked about data, and there's a new role for data in data management. And so anyone in here taking focus on IT, or I know we have a lot of creative space, but anyone from computer science? Yeah, so computer science, so this world of data management, data curation, data wrangling, it's a gap in the industry. There's a lot of, everyone wants to focus on the end state of using AI, but you've got to feed AI. Feeding it with data is just as important. So there's a lot of things around data. There's a lot of jobs around. This is a huge area for net new jobs around data management. And so just a little commercial for Dell. So there's a lot of companies out there doing AI. And one thing that you find out about Dell, and it comes from Michael, and it comes from his background, is we are all about choice and flexibility. So if you go to a Microsoft kind of wants you to do things the Microsoft way. You guys dealt with Microsoft, you understand there's a certain way you deal with Microsoft and their technology, which is completely and totally different than what Google's doing. And Google wants you to do it the Google way. Well, here at Dell, we offer choice, whether you want to do it in the cloud, you want to do it on-prem, you want to build it yourself, or you want something that's turnkey out of the box. We have flexibility and options around that. So, like I mentioned, there's an arms race between NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel. Dell were partnered with all those guys, and Meta is actually huge. So, yep, and Meta is creating a bunch of AI models, and we partnered with them. So I've got this last video. I just wanted to show you what's available today. It's kind of interesting. It's a video use case. So we have a technology where we can take an executive, we sit them in front of a camera, and they record video for 2 or 3 hours, kind of reading a script. And then that's ingested into an AI, and then you can use that to synthesize that new video. The AI is not making these lips move, but it's taking a whole bunch of little chunks of video and stitching them together. So I'm going to play this last video. You kind of see what the art of the possible is today. So this is a demo video. It's for a legal use case, trying to get people out of college to go to a particular law firm. And this video was completely synthesized by generative AI, and it just, maybe.
Hi, I'm Kevin Kramer, Chief Strategic Planner at Dell Technologies and a former attorney in commercial banking. The following video showcases how turnkey AI can generate hyper-personalized videos for use in high-value situations such as recruiting or executive communications.
In this demonstration, we are going to create a personalized recruiting video for a sales associate. Hyper-personalizing video content can increase the engagement and watch time of the video by 13 times compared to a generic video. You can leverage this improvement to create more affinity and prestige for for your highly desirable summer associate candidates. In fact, my voice and this entire narration is also generated 100% using generative AI.
Hi, Michael. I'm Steve Brad, head of the recruiting committee at Brown Smith. My colleagues very much enjoyed meeting you in my.
So this is a fairly produced
They're so
video.
impressed with your academic success
Looks
today.
really nice.
Your interest in corporate securities laws and your various other accomplishments. As a result, we'd like to invite you to our New York City office to discuss further the possibility of your participation in our upcoming summer associate program. With over 1,000 lawyers in 15 offices around the world, we are confident that you will find the nature of our legal practice both rewarding and challenging. During your visit, you'll have the opportunity to meet with a number of partners and associates to learn more about the nature of our legal practice. I asked Tom McKim, who handles administrative arrangements of our recruiting efforts, to contact you to discuss a visit to Brown Smith's New York office. We'll discuss with you, among other things, reimbursement arrangements. I hope that you will confirm with Tom your acceptance of our invitation. In closing, I wish you continued success at NYU Law School. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions regarding this visit to Brown Smith.
So it's a pretty smooth produced video. That video was produced in about 3 minutes by generative AI. It took about 50 different video elements, including the logos, the transitions, and actually him saying a particular name that was all synthesized with generative AI. So it would have taken a human with a mouse, a long time to produce a video like that. It was produced in 3 minutes with generative AI. So that's kind of the state of the art possible today around creating videos.
I'm sorry, did AI generate the stock footage in there too, or was it fed the stock footage like?
The stock footage was fed. Right. So there's a difference between synthesizing new video, which is what like OpenAI is doing now with text to video. This is actually taking a whole bunch of chunks of video and stitching it together, including the logos and the transitions and the stock video. But it's an interesting technology. So it's a stopgap between full synthesis, but this is kind of amalgamation of chunks.
Did you have to direct it? Like, is there still a director saying, okay, we're gonna give you all this information, we want it to look
Nope.
like this, and it has to 3 minutes?
If you saw it, they filled out a form on a webpage. They answered a bunch of questions and it produced a video. And now if you didn't like it, you go change or you can pull that into a video editor.
So it's very user friendly.
Very,
Put it in.
if you watch that video again, you'll see that it's just a web form that filled out saying, I want this type of answer, I want this type of engagement, I want this type of response, this is the audience. So it's pretty interesting. So I know we're talking about, like I said, they're talking about audience.
Yeah.
One more question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Regarding this video that took 3 minutes and all of it, if you wanted to go in and then change something, right? You wanted, I don't like this picture here, or I don't like what he's saying there. What's that process?
So part of that process is the data curation. So there's a repository of data that was brought in. It's all these little, so they sat down with an executive, they had him read a particular type of script. It took about 3 hours for the human to be video to read the script. That's pulled, there's an AI ingestion, it breaks it down into these little tiny chunks of video. But every one of those chunks has to be reviewed and approved by a human. So there's a human in the loop. And you say, yes, that is the corporate mission statement. That is the appropriate logo. That one is that logo's out of date. And so there's this whole process of curating the data. So it's all authoritative, it's relevant, and it's valid. It's up to date. But out of that repository, then the AI pulls from that to create the video. So if there's something in there that you didn't like, you just go back into the curation to delete or update a piece of content.
Yeah, and we will have a full Q&A session.
Sorry.
No,
it's
okay.
good.
I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we have time for John.
Yeah. So I won't wait to.
No, how are we doing time? Do you want to pivot to Lightstorm, or do you want to?
How much more time do we have?
I think we're fine. I mean, yeah, go ahead. Go stay with the original.
Yeah, so John is a data scientist, God bless him, he deals with mathematics all day. I barely pass algebra.
No worries there. So I want to kind of shift the conversation a little bit about from the organizational perspective, the macro, right, to the individual, the micro. How can you use AI to increase your own productivity? And really the message here is going to be the same for everyone. And whether you're going to be starting your own business, entrepreneurship, or joining the corporate world, or embracing the gig economy. But the message here is that everyone needs to become a data scientist. Everyone needs to change their majors to become data scientists right now. No, I'm just kidding, sorry. I'm a little biased, of course. But I truly do believe that if you have this data scientist mindset, it's going to benefit you in the future. It's going to give you a leg up on what your competitors are doing in the space. And there's a lot of elements to what makes up a data scientist, right? From the technical background of machine learning and database knowledge and processing data and coding, things like that. Of course, that's a big element of data scientists. But there's also this notion that data scientists are not just number crunchers, okay? They're problem solvers. In AI projects, not all things go smoothly. You have to go through roadblocks. You have to work with different teams. You have to understand how to problem solve and how to get through things. And finally, you need to be able to communicate your results to the stakeholders, right? Whether that be like a C-suite or some other function, right? Business value doesn't really translate until you make data-driven decisions. So the idea is that these things, that the coding and the technical aspect, that's stuff that's really going to be kind of abstracted away with things like ChatGPT and coding assistants. So if you can focus on the soft skills, the hacker mindset, right? That's really the key takeaway. You don't have to worry so much about the technical stuff. You can focus on the problem-solving skill set. You're going to be well suited for the future. Okay, who here uses Microsoft Excel? Perhaps used it before. All right. This answer I was expecting. Did you know that back, there was a time where spreadsheets and using Excel was actually a highly valuable skill and highly paid position. And nowadays, everyone uses it, right? Just a part of business. We kind of see the same path forward for prompt engineering, right? The ability to interact with large language models to its full capabilities, it's a skill in itself. And right now, there's a lot of literature, a lot of documentation on how to do it. But it takes a little time, it takes some practice. So really, there's really some key components of prompts, right? There's the intent, right? What are you asking from it? What do you want it to solve? There's the context, right? What external factors do you need to tell the LLM to help formulate its response? There's input data. What specific items of numbers or literature do you want the LLM to incorporate to the response? And then there's the output data, right? How are you able to consume that data, whether that's in a form to make it more easily digestible for yourself or another application, right? These are just the basic concepts of prompt engineering. That's just a good start. And I put some documentation, some links on some guides on how to do that. But really the idea is like, if you think about just how you interact with humans, you're taking in information, whether you know it consciously or not. If someone asks you, hey, what's a good social club on campus, right? You're going to formulate a response based on whether or not you know that person from before, whether you know their interests. If you're just meeting for the first time, maybe you're kind of saying their age or the clothes that they're wearing. That might help you kind of generate a first response, right? LLMs work the same way. They don't know what they need to do unless you give them all the information you need to do. And that's the idea of prompt engineering. This is just more of a deep dive of prompt engineering. It goes into a little bit more of each of the pillars. But the idea here is that, going back to that data scientist hacker mindset of iteration, you're going to get better through prompt engineering by doing it a lot of times and doing it over and over. So people are able to do these prompts and log those responses and go through them systematically, right? Those are the types of people that are going to really succeed in using this in the future. Here's just a prompt comparison tool. So these are available online. As you're kind of learning how to do prompt engineering and you're practicing out in practice, these types of tools are really helpful. So you can select a model, you can select like a Llama 2 model and compare it against a Mistral 7 billion parameter model. You put in the same prompt, and it's going to give you the response from each of the models, right? Each model is not going to give you the same exact response. There's different ways they're trained on data, different number of parameters, complexity. So the best way to kind of understand these models and get practice is to do these prompt engineering iteration, do it over and over. You know, once you get the first response, that's going to help shape how you do the next fine tuning of that prompt. So just putting out there as kind of tools that are great to use and get that practice. So I want to talk a little bit about what's new in AI, and I think the biggest kind of subject right now is this text to video, right? Google announced Lumiere about a month ago, and it's gotten pretty great reviews. It can do text to video, image to video, video continuation. There's a dozen or so use cases, and it really took the field by storm for about a couple weeks until OpenAI released Sora, and it's the same type of thing, right? Text to video, image to video. And if you haven't checked it out, check out the website. This image here is from a prompt, and the prompt is actually pretty detailed. You tell it the type of signage you want in the background, what type of lighting, the clothes that she's wearing, how she walks, number of people in the background, right? These are all elements of prompt engineering that's going to help produce this image. But really the takeaway from this is that they haven't released this for the public yet to try it on their own. So potentially everything works as expected as they show in the video.
For a cost.
For a cost,
It's going to be
yes.
behind the paywall.
Yes, of course. But the world awaits to see what's going to look like in practice. And while we're waiting, I kind of want to mention this, not really dichotomy, but there's two kind of fields, right? The open source versus closed source developers in this space, right? And hope you don't mind the avatar analogy in front of Lightstorm here. So just a dramatization, right? It's not good versus evil, but there's this idea of open source technology, right? It's for the democratization of AI. It's making it accessible for everybody. It's the low barriers to entry. You don't have to rely on GPUs. Models are free to use. And then there's the closed source, right? Your big players, the GPT-4s, the Googles, right? They also have important space in this field. They have the GPU farms. They have the money to pay these top AI developers. And that's why they're able to iterate so quickly and have these innovations. But really the takeaway is that the field really needs both. It's not good versus evil. I'm not taking sides, open source. But these things need to work hand in hand, right, for the benefit of the overall community. And the reason I brought up the open source is because while people are waiting for Lumiere and Sora, you can actually do these text to video models right now. There's open source versions of them. I just spun this Jupyter notebook a couple of days ago, and you can run it on a free GPU from Colab. I tried to recreate the Sora image, right, the one walking through Tokyo, and admittedly it's not great. It's not on the same level. She walks kind of funny. There's a lot of things happening. You can see that the Shutterstock text within there. That's because the open source data was trained on. So open source, I'm not saying it's on the same level, but it's a good way to practice your prompt engineering and get involved in space. But there's also these paid tools, right, that are similar, going to be competing with the Soras in the air. This one is through a company called Runway, and they have 3 credits that you can use. So again, it's about iterating. This image is obviously a little bit better than the open source one before that. But if you look closely, there's still kind of issues with the face and people walking funny in the background. So it's not perfect, but again, practicing with these tools and getting familiar with it. Another reason I want to mention the open source is because the gap between the accuracy of the open source and closed source is narrowing, and it's narrowing at a rapid pace. Typically, we see kind of a 6 to 8 month lag in performance between paid source versus open source. So again, it's just kind of keep an open mind as new tools are introduced. You don't have to rush out to pay a bunch of money to use some of these paid source tools. And the innovation in the space is happening quickly, so we really expect there to be a lot more tools that are available for everyone. Some trends in AI that I want to quickly mention are, while there's a few players making these big general purpose, 100 billion parameter models, there's also a trend for the smaller, more capable, and faster models. So just an analogy, you don't need an encyclopedia, right? If you just want to build like an automated repair book, right? You don't need it to solve everything. You want it to be task specific and purpose built.
So jack of all trades, master of none are kind of these big models.
Yeah, we don't need that for everything. They're good for some things, but out in the real world, the production environment that companies are using, right, it's smaller, a little bit better. And the reason for that is less reliance on GPUs, right? You're able to build more of these models, serve more use cases, and it's just the general trend that we're seeing on top of what we're seeing in the paid source models. And then there's this concept of autonomous AI agents. For those that are using GPT-4 now, this is kind of like the marketplace. We have the browser extensions to do specific tasks. We see a lot more companies building these out for their use cases. They're kind of like smaller models, but not exactly. They're a little bit more nuanced. They have this thing called self-reflection. So they're able to actually make decisions on their own, optimize on their own, without needing the human to tell it how to optimize or what to do. So they're really autonomous in nature. If you think about it, if you're using ChatGPT to build a website, or I'm sorry, to start a company, right? It's going to tell you, give you steps. If you want to build a website, you want to have a marketing, plan. These agents, the ChatGPT will hand off to these agents, like a website building agent that will build a website, do it autonomously, come back, tell you when it's done to review. Same thing with the marketing plan, right? There's these purpose-built agents to help do specific tasks. So I want to just kind of mention some takeaways, how to get started in the space if you haven't used some of these tools. Hugging Face Spaces, this is a great way to kind of interact with some of these tools, open source tools. Hugging Face is a repository where developers submit their models and share their models. You can play with them, you can interact with them, you can download them for yourself. It's a great way to kind of see the latest trends in AI. This idea of low-code and no-code tools, and there's a huge network of startups in the space to make AI run easier, right? So any type of analysis, if you want to do like a sentiment analysis for Twitter data, you can type in sentiment analysis in Google, you can type in sentiment analysis low-code tool, come up with a plethora of tools that you can use, all that have done these low-code, user, like UX type friendly tools we can run these business cases without needing to do that code. So they're usually paid, but they have free trials, just a great way to kind of get an understanding of what's happening in the system. And then I'll mention here for folks that kind of further down the line, they kind of understand a little bit more about the code and models. If you get yourself a laptop or a desktop with a GPU on it, that is like gold. Right, you can run these models locally on your own machine. You don't have to rely on these kind of free versions in the cloud or just pay costs. That's really going to kind of unlock a bunch of iterations you can do in the space. You want to end with his last four here?
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned most of this stuff is understand the why rather than the what. Why are you going to use AI? Is it appropriate? Ethically minded. And it's a lifelong journey. It's here to AI is here to stay, and so we're all responsible for our own learning path. We can't expect colleges and professors to spoon feed us what we need to know. We have to take our own personal responsibility for our own learning, and ultimately practice, build, and then once you're out in the workforce, contribute. And then share what you know. So that's one of the reasons we're here, is to kind of share some of our experiences. And then, I'm an engineer, John's a data scientist, and that's not what AI is about. It's about using AI. So there's all these new job roles coming up. AI art director, AI personality designer, AI ethicist. You know, there's all of these new roles that are coming out. AI work auditor, right? So I was out researching all these new roles in AI, and it's not, you don't have to be a data scientist. You can if you want. It's only so cool. Anyway, that's kind of, you know, just going to kind of close out this, you know, it's, don't be fearful of AI, embrace it, understand it, use it, and then, you know, teach what you learn to others.
Guys, I'm Kat. I'm a marketing intern here at the Leatherby Center.
My name is Tim Bicio. I'm Chief Technology Officer for James Cameron's Lightstorm Entertainment. So I don't know if you've heard of him, but makes films like Avatar and that sort of stuff, just little independent films.
I guess my first question for you today is, you've been in the industry for so long. So how has digital transformation within the film industry evolved since you first started?
I think it started since I started. So I started in film in 1992, I hate to say it, I know I look much younger. But I started as a PA entry level, and I worked on a set, the visual effects sets of Judge Dredd. And if anybody's seen that, those were all model cities. Everything was miniatures. And when I say a model city, we had a city that filled this room with 13-foot skyscrapers. My initial jobs were like pasting little color copy vignettes into the windows of the skyscrapers, driving film to Manhattan for processing. So I started in a very analog film industry and literally witnessed, I mean, I shifted into the IT department and I helped to roll out Windows 3.11, which was Windows with networking. So very, very early on in technology. So I've seen sort of the entire sort of progression to date. And you know, as I mentioned, I presently am CTO for the Avatar franchise for Jim Cameron. Everything is now digital. You know, and by the way, when I started working for them 19 years ago, they had an email server, 3 firewalls, and some network hubs. And so that company, we sort of brought that company from analog Titanic to digital, fully digital, 3D Avatar 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Going more into that, what are the key technological advancements that have impacted?
You know, it's difficult to say because, you know, I've been there for so long, you're kind of in it, you know, and in many ways, Jim's is always on the bleeding edge, Jim Cameron, of technology. In fact, he tells a story some time ago about, or John used to tell a story about how Jim wrote Avatar, you know, 14 years before we made it, because he was waiting for technology to catch up with some of his ideas. Let's not forget this guy brought you Terminator and warned you all about AI way in advance, and nobody listened, right? So, you know, and I want to, there's this misnomer. I got a list of questions from you all about, you know, how AI, film. Jim is one of the, you know, one of the big classic, you know, filmmakers. And anybody who, you know, if you ask a carpenter how to do something, or you ask a filmmaker how to do something, they'll tell you to get the right tool and know how to use it. And AI is going to be a tool in the toolbox of filmmakers, and it's going to be used in different ways. And sometimes you're going to use it wrong, and sometimes you're going to use it differently, and it's going to become a new tool for that new thing. Again, I'm old enough to remember when non-linear editing came into space. There were a lot of editors who were scared, who refused to use it. They work on film, and they're going to work on film, and they're going to work on film until they're dead. Some editors left the business, and some editors went to Avid and went to non-linear, and they learned it. And you know, folks coming up in non-linear editing get it really, you know, and sometimes you have these excellent editors, A-list editors, who are still a little bit nervous about the technology, but they're still cutting amazingly. So everything is a tool, and if you look at AI as And it's gonna make movies and replace all these jobs. It's gonna replace the jobs that are mundane and tedious, we hope. And one of the things that I tell my team, I manage an IT department as well. I said, look, let's automate the simple problems. Let's not do the mundane things. I don't want you to do mundane work. I want you to do things that are exciting and new, and that bring your skill level up so that when you leave here and you go somewhere else, you're at the next level. Don't use the technology for the mundane, and everything else we should be growing ourselves.
But just going more into the AI part, how do you think it's going to influence storytelling? Because they have come out with like videos and short movies. There's only AI.
Look, I think let me tell you how I think it'll first be utilized in film, right? So there's a couple of places where I can see it being really useful. So for instance, what's the word I'm thinking of here? Previs. So we do a lot of previs and go, okay, what would the action look like in the scene? It's kind of blocky and chunky, and it's not really, the fluid isn't motion, right? So you can see that being used there. You can see AI being used in things like, conjure me an image of an alien with green hair, and in sort of this idea making that would inspire maybe an artist to go like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, right? I can see it being used in screen graphics, right? Like we've all seen screen graphics that sort of suck, right? And we go, oh, that the movie was so good, and the screen graphics, right? So you can see generate me, I'm thinking when I think of screen graphics, I think about for instance, what's the name of the movie? How Cool Minority Report was, right? But we have all these other clunky screen graphics. So there are ways that where I think AI will play a role kind of on screen. I think there are a lot of ways that it'll play a role off screen. But in terms of storytelling, I think the key ingredient, or at least the major driver to filmmaking, is the human experience. And if you don't understand what it means to lose somebody you loved, or if you don't understand what it means to, to be a human being, you're not going to be able to tell a complete story. Will AI be able to generate a vignette, a chase scene vignette? Maybe. Will it be able to create some dialogue around something, kind of humoristic dialogue around some topic? Sure. Or will it be able to write like a 230-minute film that we all identify with in a way that is remarkable? Maybe not yet.
So I think it was interesting what Peter Jackson did with Massive, right, with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
The unfilmable movie, right? No one was ever going to be able to do it, and they used they didn't call it AI, but it was a primitive AI, but to create thousands upon thousands of characters on the field.
Right. They call what's that tool? They call that they call it Army Maker or something like that. I should have named it, but yeah. And in fact, so we're partners with Weta. So Weta is our visual effects company. We partner with them on software. We have used their tools. So did I answer that?
Yeah. How would you say would balance the artistic vision with technology?
So I run technology for the company. I'm a service department. So we provide services, we provide storage, we provide networking, we provide everything you need from my mouse doesn't work to disaster recovery and business continuity, right? So we round up all of that. And I think that the question is, how do you balance, how do you work with creative people who are working on technology? And the answer is it's not easy. Creative people want to have no boundaries, they want no rules, they don't want to tell you that they can't put that there, and they can't take it home with them, they can't be on the machine. And we live in a different world now. One of Jim's mandates when we started, when we started Avatar 2 was, DoD level security. He doesn't want any leaks, right? It's not that he's afraid someone's going to steal his idea and make these movies because nobody else can make them, and certainly not in less time for less money than Jim can do it. But when you sit in his movie theater and you watch his movie, he wants you to be blown away. He wants you to see this for the first time. He wants it to be fresh to you. He wants you to have no idea where it's coming from. And if you read the script on Reddit, you're going to go in with a disposition about the film, right? You had asked me earlier, and I'll just to double down on that point. In terms of technology, the first avatar, Jim sent a team of people out to thousands of movie theaters around the country to measure the light output of their projectors, the type of screens they had, the curvature of the screen, the distance from the projector to the screen, and he came up with an algorithm for what kinds of masters we needed. Most films master 2 types of masters, maybe 3 or 4 now, but it used to be a CinemaScope master and a flat or a 185 master, right? We mastered about 77 masters on the first avatar, because when you go to a movie theater, he wants you to have the master that's going to fit that screen, and with the light output's is going to be appropriate. The 3D isn't going to make you nauseous, right? So all these things are intentional, and so when we talk about how we use technology and how Jim employs technology, it's not to employ technology. It's not to use AI. It's not to get away with a gimme. It's to tell his story in the best possible way that he can tell a story.
What is your leadership style, and what are some ways you have mastered managing and communication with creatives?
Well, let's see. My leadership style is, there's nothing I ask anybody to do who works with me that I won't do myself. I think that's a key component to leadership. If you, and by the way, if you do it, you're also training them how to do it right? I believe in kind of enjoying who you work with, and finding people who are like-minded, who put forward the same effort you put forward, right? Lead by example, right? Don't blame people, own your own shit. If you mess up, own it. Teach people to own their own mistakes. That's how you learn, and that's how you grow. And if you blame people, if you throw somebody else under the bus and you get away with it, good for a day. But if you learn from that mistake and you own it, people respect that. And I will also say that if you work with people who respect people who own things, those are the people you want to work with. So just a little bit of advice, I guess. How do I work with creatives? Carefully. I think there's. I've had a lot of conversations where they go, "Well, I want this, and I want that's too late." I'm sorry, we'll do our best to improve on that, but that's what it's going to take. So technology sometimes moves slowly, especially when you're building a facility or you're setting up a circuit on the ocean, that kind of thing. So we just have to be careful, be calm. One of the things that I have developed over the years is, there's a calmness that comes with confidence, right? If you understand a problem, if you don't understand what's going wrong, you panic. If you understand the problem deeply enough, and you know that there's a path to fix it, you're much more calm about the situation. And there's twice in my career with Jim Cameron, I've sent him home today. Okay, so not a good look, but over 20 years, it's a pretty good clip. So, just don't make mistakes. And if you do, own them. And if you, just have a way out of it.
This was more of a personal question that I asked before, but I wanted to tell you guys. But how did you feel when you watched the movie?
So when I watched Avatar 2 for the first time, okay, so look, I'm in a unique position in that I don't have to sit through screenings and I don't have to look at all the shots. And in fact, I almost don't. I've had just a quick side story. I had some artists came up to me and said, "Well, you can just go into here and look at this." And I said, "Actually, I can't." I mean, "What do you mean you can't?" I go, "Well, I don't have access." They go, "What do you mean you don't have access?" I go, "I purposely don't have access to that content because I'm a target. So if somebody wants to hack our network, they're going to go after me, they're going to go after John, they're going to go after Jim. So I don't have access." And they just thought that was crazy. So I don't, I'm nuts and bolts. I'm networking, I'm data storage, I'm planning, I'm budgeting. And so I was lucky enough not to have to sit through all these iterations of this stuff. So when I sat down, I saw it fresh. I saw it at the premiere. So I saw it in the best possible theater you can see it in. It's been technically QC'd by Jim's team like 5 times. Everything was perfect. And I remember sitting down, and I'm not an emotional movie goer, but when you put this much time into a film, that opening scene where you just see the wind sprites kind of floating gently in the air, and the 3D is perfect, and the audio is perfect, and I just sat there and marveled because I felt like I was looking at Jim's world through a piece of glass that was crystal clear, it was so clean. And you almost want to cry a little bit because it's this 10 years of your work, that's gone into this. So that's why.
How would you say audiences usually underestimate about a film with VFX being such a big component?
I think they have no idea how long it takes to bring it to market. I think they have no idea how long it takes to put a shot together. In our situation, our process is one of the most complex processes there is in the film industry, right? And I could talk for probably an hour and a half on what our process is, and you'd all be interested, it wouldn't be boring. But it's really complicated. Just to get the shot to the visual effects house to start their work, there's probably somewhere between 8 and 6 to 8 months of work just to prep that shot to go to the visual effects house. Once they get it, they've got another probably 3 to 4 months of work on it. So that's one shot. And so obviously we're not doing them, we're doing them in barrel, but that's how long it takes.
How important is the role of sound and audio technology in creating an immersive experience for the audience?
Again, I'll refer back to my earlier conversation about, the amount of effort Jim puts into every detail and using technology appropriately. He uses sound, he uses visual effects, he uses, he uses the use of 3D. It's all intentional. It's not needle in your eye. So if you look at Jim Cameron's, Jim Cameron kind of brought 3D back into the game. And originally when you all saw 3D, it was needle in your eye, just poking out the screen, isn't that fun, right? And it made you sick. And Jim said, no, we do it better to do it. And through the use of technology, through the use of, careful execution, he treats 3D like it's audio and sound. Everything is intentional, everything is perfect, everything is going to inform what you're watching and bring you and draw you more into the story and let you leave your world behind for 2.5 hours.
Those are all the questions I have for you, but is there anyone in the audience that has questions for Tim?
I wanted to ask, you talked a lot about screens and the best theater to watch a movie, and you talked a lot about the experience when you were answering the questions, and we just made me think about like what's next for the experience. We got the new Vision Pros, we got the like different ways to experience content. So what do you think? Where do you think this is going? What do you think? How do you think film and AR or VR are going to blend together in the future?
So there's some things I can't tell you about. Tell us. But first and foremost, and I'll say this from a company perspective, Jim believes in theaters. He believes that going to the movies and watching a movie with 300 of your closest friends is one of the best experiences we can have. Because you're experiencing this together and sort of like your collective disbelief lends to the credibility of the experience, right? I think that Vision Pro glasses watching a movie on a flight is gonna be way better than watching a movie this big, right? So again, it's about the tool and it's about the use case. So I think Vision Pro is great for a number of things. I don't think it's going to replace or at least solve that community experience that we want you to have watching.
Yeah, so that brings up a point. So the social experience of the movie. Yeah, right. So has anyone gone to a theater and cheered in a movie? Out loud, cheered. I had an experience. So it was my 11th birthday, May 25th, 1977. It was the opening day of Star Wars, right? And the entire, when they blew up the Death Star, the entire audience was on their feet cheering. I've never had that experience before, so it's a social experience, right? You wouldn't get that with a VR headset. So, and also I wanted to ask you about physical effects versus virtual effects. So Lord of the Rings, a lot of physical effects. The Hobbit, a lot of bad AI, but bad effects. So can you elaborate, where Jim's going between physical and virtual and sort of blend is, to me, visual effects should be subtle, but it should tell a story. It's not there just to highlight visual effects.
Again, I'll just say that visual effects and everything is a tool to Jim. It's a tool to tell a story. And if he can't tell the story, I go back to this original story where Jim couldn't make Avatar because the technology hadn't gotten caught up with him yet. He couldn't generate photoreal creatures that people would believe in. So he tabled it. He's written 4, 5, 6, 7. So he's pretty much locked into this Avatar world, and he's heavily locked into this virtual photography world. So I'm not quite sure which question you're asking, but I'm gonna answer a question I wanted you to ask. So Jim does quite a bit with mixing those two worlds. So if you shoot, so virtual photography is a combination of live action plus a bunch of markers plus motion capture. And then we go back and we edit that material into, and we staple that data onto characters and creatures in this virtual world. But then we marry that sometimes with live action as well. And so he's created this whole pipeline around, we call it simulcam. And simulcam is sort of like, if you think about green screen, it's not green screen, but he can project his virtual scene that's already been composed, let's say, into his camera while he's shooting live action, so he can marry the action from the virtual scene into the live action scene.
So do you see green screen dying? Because you see these massive monitors, right, that they use for like recording.
Again, I think it's a tool. I think that, with every one of these things, and by the way, it's always interesting when I see somebody bring back some old tool from God knows when, right? And they go, well, we'll do it that way, and you, yeah, that is a way, right? And that worked for 100 years. Why aren't we using it? So, always want to be careful not to over-engineer and over, spend a lot of money and shit, right? In fact, the first film, this is a funny story. Jake character going down river. Do you all remember that? He's going down river, right? You know how he did that? Performance capture on an office chair.
So you just push down the chair?
We just pushed it on an office chair. So don't underestimate the tool you need, right? And don't overestimate the tool. Use the tool that's appropriate for what you need. In fact, the other story I'll tell you is so all the advantage he's flying. Literally, Jim and Richie Datum on set doing this. So again, if there's a story to be told, and you want to do it as cheap and cheery as you can, but you want it to look nice. So that's my answer, I guess. I hope that helps. We have somebody over here who had a question that was not on the panel.
Yeah. Use the microphone. You want to use this? I can talk loud too. Check. So, we started with the Dell team showcasing this kind of hyper personalization of law firm recruitment or whatever it was. And I think a lot about how this impacts kind of the broader film and media industry, right? Kind of the Black Mirror hyper personalization at scale. Maybe not so much the James Cameron go to the movie type model, but the big streaming companies, Netflix, Disney, and whatnot, that are curating and using algorithms to make recommendations of the next show that you want to watch. Do you see a world in where that becomes even more hyper personalized? Like, for example, I was thinking as you guys were talking, my wife and I both love Deadpool. Now, we love it because, we mutually love it because it's funny, the comedy, we both love Ryan Reynolds, right? She hates the gordiness factor, right? I love it, right? Is there a world in where she could opt into her profile, right? Watch that without the gore, right? I could get the gore. Like, do you think that that is where it is going in terms of hyper personalization?
You know, I don't know. I think it's gonna be up to the creators, right, the creative people behind these things, right? So there is a world where, and again, I look at Minority Report, you know, oh, Mr. I forget his name, you know, did you like that T-shirt you bought? You know, it's like, I can see that playing a role in a bunch of different sort of genres of films, right? Where you can pick your own, you pick your own indie kind of thing, or, you know, what do you think about this? And I don't think we're there yet, and I certainly don't think Jim Cameron's there yet. I think Jim Cameron's gonna tell stories the way he's been telling stories for the last 30 years. You know, and to us, again, these are all tools to us. You know, we'll use AI and machine learning to simplify complex processes that human beings shouldn't have to do anymore.
Yeah.
Would bring us, you know, we're not concerned about getting the movie to the theaters quicker. We're really concerned about getting a movie to look as amazing as we can with the money and the time we have. So,
Which is funny because it's almost the opposite. At least it feels that way with the streaming platforms. It's like Netflix is cranking out more content than they ever have before. They're globalizing it to be multi-translation, right? It's just how much can we produce? How can we optimize the algorithm? You're more about quality over quantity, right?
you know, again, not me, but Jim, you know, I mean, you know, Jim's about making the movie he wants to make, right? And so again, it's gonna be, and by the way, there are very few directors in Hollywood who can make the movie they wanna make you know, as long as it takes them to make it, and Jim's one of them, right? So there's very few people, so I live in a different world, you know, I'm not saying it's not gonna happen, I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm saying I work with a filmmaker who makes the movies he wants to make.
Cool, thanks.
Yes, sir.
So, thanks for having me. I'm Stuart from UCI. We're very focused on narratives, and you really caught my attention when you started talking about storytelling. So we're very focused on every aspect of storytelling, from economics to education to humanities.
Right.
What are you seeing in the tool space, as you mentioned? You know, we all connect with that certain thing. I was blown away by art, didn't expect it, you know, the message inside it. Right. Are you seeing cognitive science, computational math, and other things come into tools that allow storytellers to understand how to actually hit that soft spot and make it work?
No. Mic drop. No, and again, I'm probably not the person to answer that. And again, I'll go back to the person I work for writes stories, right? And he doesn't use tools, right? And I'll tell you you know, the tool that he uses is, you know, this, and he has dreams. I mean, he'll dream some of this shit, right? So, you know.
I think to answer a bit of your question, going back to the you said, math, and it's the data that comes in. So what data are you gonna have? What data are you gonna have that a mathematical system is gonna be able to say, this is the sweet spot? When that sweet spot constantly changes based on society, values, current situations.
Yeah, and you know, the thing to that is the human brain looks at risk and other things different than a computer does, right? So, you know, we burn our hand and go, oh, don't do that again. The computer doesn't look at the same way that the human does.
Look, and by the way, there's already a model of it's the movie in 3 acts, right? There are, you know, this has to happen by the end of this act, and this has to happen by the end of this act, and boy meets girl, boy falls in love with, we can do, right? All these exist already in these simple terms, and if you look at the movies that capture us the most, they're a basic story. You know, they're you know, I mean, Avatar isn't a complex story. You know, but it's something. You know, our goal is to take you out of your world for a little bit and to let you imagine another world that you believe for 2.5 hours and can't stop talking about it for 2 weeks. Right? So.
There you go. Yes.
Hi, I'm the Director of Animation and Visual Effects. I'm very excited to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I wanted to ask about how AI is changing the workflow that you have at Lightstorm, and in particularly
the recent public rise of generative AI, if that's been useful, and if you expect your methodologies to change dramatically or suddenly. I know you're always changing things, but I'm just wondering if there's a big shift happening in the way you do things.
So far not yet. So we're not employing, I think we employed some machine learning in processing of facial motion and stuff like that. The other thing to keep in mind is that like, we're not making films that last 2 months where we can then retool and do another film and retool and do another tool. So kind of once we're in flight, we're in flight and we're working with what we have and you're not going to experiment on Jim's deadlines in flight, right? So that's probably one of the biggest challenges to these long form films that we make is that once we lock into it, we have to lock into software versions, we have to lock into OS versions, we have to lock into GPU driver versions, right? And we very carefully move that stuff, kind of roll that stuff along. So, I anticipate that for, right now we're in the middle of 3, probably for 4 and 5, we'll start to look at, in the very near future, sort of incorporating some of these tools.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, I thank you all for your time, sharing your expertise with us. This question is more directly towards the AI side of things. Having just attended CES and even the big dog companies, all of a sudden their branding has AI, whether they're actually using it or not, and being involved in the investor space in the startup world. I'm not a tech savvy person. Fortunately, my business partner is and fund partner is, but how do you best differentiate what is actual AI and not? What's the simple way of going, yeah, this company is really incorporating actual AI, or no, it's just basic machine learning and not? Can you maybe explain simply how a person can differentiate?
So I think a lot of it is, are they using generative AI? So AI is this umbrella term to start with, right? It goes all the way back to statistical analytics, predictive analytics, machine learning. So AI, traditional AI has been around for a long time, but are they using the tool to synthesize net new content? And in that ecosystem of synthesizing net new content, there's a lot of controls, there's a lot of input, there's a lot of, so are they in that space? But then there's a ton of money being pumped into the industry right now. You got huge corporations spending billions upon billions of dollars. The question is, what's the return? Is this a bubble? And I think it is a bubble. We lived through the bubble of the late 1990s, right? Then we lived through the cloud bubble, which is being rationalized between on-prem and cloud. So I think this AI bubble, a lot of hype, but it really has to come down to what is the value that you're getting out of it. And so for anyone that wants to be in the space, are you bringing differentiation? Are you bringing something? And then there's a lot of startups. So the question is how quickly are they burning through their investment? Who's behind them? What's their plan? A lot of these startups are just waiting to get gobbled up, right? I'm gonna go start up an AI company. I'm hoping that Microsoft's gonna buy me, right? There's that, right? And so, what are they bringing to the table? Are they bringing value to a particular problem set? And then, but what's their longevity? Who's standing behind it? Thanks.
Yeah, question here. I can just speak about. This is for you, John. I'm just curious, like, where you see large language models going. There's a lot of models out there. There's a lot of models being built. Some of them are very general. I'm wondering if the large language models are get specific to domains like healthcare, and whether sort of writing context layers on top of that are going to sort of help define not only a language model but a context for that model that then makes it kind of more oriented towards a specific purpose, or like how will we go from this generic large language model to functional applications, if you will, or use cases that are very specific?
Yes, great question. I think to answer the question, yes, companies that are using models for production are trending towards that smaller purpose-built models, like I mentioned during the presentation. And those are powered by the general purpose models. So you need a GPT-4 or large language model to be able to direct the use cases and tasks that need to be done, right? You kind of need that encyclopedia analogy. And then the smaller AI engines, those are doing specific tasks of building out specific items, you know, like the website or whatever you're trying to do. So it's a combination of those things that are going to happen, you know, in practice, but there's still a lot of development that needs to happen in terms of to make those task-specific models really, really functional. I think we still have a ways to go to kind of cross that bridge.
Those will be written to sort of take the trans model and do very specific tasks with that model.
Yes, so they can kind of make decisions on their own, right? So they're optimizing. So if there's a task to build a website, right? They're going to build a website, but then it's also going to track the reviews, right? Track the different demographics, who's accessing the website, and then it's going to change the website to track more ways of getting views and things like that. So it's that type of automation and optimization within these tasks that makes these type of smaller models more powerful.
Yeah, so you can chain multiple models together. So there was this, everyone was moving towards the bigger general purpose model. And what they found out is when they put controls in place for safety, that the models got less accurate. So GPT-4 was fairly accurate, did a lot of things, but then there was people were misusing it. So they put controls in place and it got less smart, right? It couldn't add 2 + 2 anymore. So with GPT-5, if you go look at that architecture, it's a large model surrounded by all of these helper models that are very task focused, very accurate. So the larger model will call out to the smaller ones, but you can also use something like LangChain to chain different models together today and bring your own model.
If I was like, last question, but if I was my own company, I just wanted to write a GPT that was specific to me and has context around my company and that's questions that I would want to have people in my company or expect my company to ask. Would that be to create a sort of sub GPT?
I think that's in the realm of what we call fine tuning. So you take a generic pre-trained model like Llama 2, which, and then you bring it in-house, and then you're going to customize or fine-tune that model based on a set of proprietary training data. And you're going to change the weights and balances in the model based on that data set, and then that becomes your customized version of that model that has intellectual property in it. So you've got to protect it, but that's what you will use. So that generic model becomes knowledgeable about your specific products. So it's fine tuning.
I would just like to circle back to prompt engineering for a second. I personally love prompt engineering. I recently taught an MA award-winning director how prompt engineering works, so I'm very into it. But with the rapid evolution of technology and where we're currently at, what is your prediction for how much longer prompt engineering will actually be useful before it becomes obsolete?
I don't have a prediction. I will say that yes, there are tools out there that are automating prompt engineering, right? I think Llama 2 has an element of it that can help write your prompts as you're kind of going through it. So again, it's still kind of getting that foundational knowledge around why you're doing prompt engineering and the different elements. Some of it may be automated in the future, but still it's that problem solving, creative mindset, hacker mindset that's going to help you out in the future. So there may be elements of it that get probably automated, but still I think it's important to have that knowledge.
Yeah, I think without prompt engineering in this automation of prompts. But if you give a simple question, the system could assume a bunch of things and give you an answer that you weren't expecting. So the more specific you are with the question, whether it's in a specific formatted prompt, but if you can be more specific about what you want, you'll get a better answer. The more generic, if it's a single 1-sentence line, you get what you get. So the thing about prompt engineering is the more detailed you are, the better and more accurate the output is. But is it a language? Is it a skill? Can that be automated for you? Yeah. So, but it's still about what do I want? And am I getting the output that I expected? And is the system assuming all of these parameters that I didn't tell it. So it's taking these general assumptions to give me an output.
Yeah, just share a use case that might be interesting for people. I do a lot of work with large companies like Procter & Gamble and SC, where we're trying to decide new products that they should bring to market. So when they're doing prompt engineering, they sometimes have 6,000 lines of code to kind of convey a specific consumer persona, women at this age, in this lifestyle, in this demographics, that cares about these things and so on and so forth. And once they create that massive persona on the model, they can then start asking questions of the model from that persona and literally say like, well, what's the next product of life? It's not quite there yet, but the prompt engineering is not just about writing the code. It's about knowing the context that you're wanting to set and why you're wanting to set that context, so that when you ask the questions, you get answers that are most relevant to what you're actually trying to do with the model.
Yeah, so I've done things like prompt chat GPT, all right, respond as if you're a CEO, and it gives me a response. And then I take the response that it gave me and feed it back into the system. Now respond to me as if you were the CFO. And I take that, and so I take these outputs, I feed it back into the engine with different parameters. So it's not just once and done. You're constantly taking the feedback. It's a feedback loop. You're constantly feeding that back into another prompt and into another prompt. So it's not a single prompt.
In terms of use of AI, in a few years, are all companies going to absolutely need to use AI, or is it becoming a necessity or not?
I don't think you can ignore it anymore. So I was dealing with a large global bank, and they want to spend all this money on AI, which is great. The question is what are you going to use it for? Why? Why do you want to do it? And finally, I got an answer from the CIO was, well, there was this report that came out, and our bank is last on the list of banks doing AI, and all our competition's doing it. So it's a lousy reason to do it, but people are doing AI because their competition's doing it. So it's this iterative process where I think you're doing it, so I'm going to go do it, so you're going to go do it, and it's just this kind of arms race, right, between companies. The reason you want to do it is to gain efficiencies, to make the lives of humans better, right? So the redundant, repetitive task, to probably get a better outcome, so a better product, better user experiences from your customer base, interacting with your company. So you have to have a reason to go do it. And it's not just because your competition's doing it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a competitive disadvantage, right? If you're not using AI. And a lot of companies that we work with, we have to kind of figure out where they are on this build versus buy spectrum. So you can build your own AI. It's going to take a lot of work to build it specific to your own company and what your needs. Or there's a lot of companies that are building these products that can plug into any company, right? And there's a lot of opportunity to do that. There's a lot of vendors in that space. So whether or not companies are where they are on that spectrum, they're going to be using AI.
I don't want to interrupt you, but if you guys haven't read the Age of AI, I have to sort of slightly disagree. I think it's not only going to be used by every business and every function, but that it's fundamentally going to change the cultural reality of our world. If you take a look at Magnus Carlsen playing against the AI engine and then losing, and the AI engine gave up its queen in the first 3 moves, and it beat him. So he had to go back and say, like, wait, that computer, that AI engine did stuff that I would never, I'm the best chess player in the world, I would never play that way. So now he had to go back and start studying why did it play that way, because clearly it knows something I don't know. Same thing with drug discovery. They did drug discovery and they found this new drug-resistant antibiotic, but the way that the AI found it was looking at factors that doctors and scientists had never even thought of looking at. So, from where I work in business, every large company is looking at every function in their business, and I think even at a larger social level, it's going to change everything. So, I think if I'm your age, I'm all in on AI.
Yeah, we are certainly meeting in the Leatherby Center for Entrepreneurship and Business Ethics. So one of the job descriptions or positions was the AI ethicist. What would be the ideal background for someone applying for that job?
I think it would be someone who's maybe from the school, or from interested in law, to begin with. So again, ethics is knowing I have the right to do something, but what I'm going to do, is it right? And so just because the law says one way doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. But I think the law school may be a good place to start. But ethics is different than law. And so, is it the right thing to do is really what it comes down to. So psychology, legal field, I think the marriage of those two, maybe. But it's a tool. But it's a tool that can do great things. It's also a tool that can do great harm, especially when it's misused or intentionally misused, the criminal usage of it. So, we work for a company that's very ethical, and sometimes you think, is that stifling innovation? Maybe it's stifling innovation, but I would rather not do something than do something that causes harm. So, is there a place for ethics? Absolutely. Should we have people focused on ethics? Absolutely. Are they become a consultant at that point to business? I think they are, right? Different than a legal consultant, it's an ethics consultant.
Thank you.
Question for you guys. Thank you for your time, by the way. From your perspective, do you think it's ethical to try and claim like AI generated art as intellectual property? Sort of building off the last question.
Well, that's a great question, because in my deck, I have about 5 pieces of art that I generated from Microsoft Copilot, which uses Dolly. And I didn't ask my company if I could do that. I didn't ask permission. I didn't go to our legal team and say, hey, can I put these artworks in my presentation? I assumed, since it was AI generated from a free public tool, that I could use it. I'm probably wrong, I'm probably going to get it wrong. But so back to the question, is it the person who put in the prompt to get the artwork out? Do they own the intellectual property? Is it the company who's hosting the model? Is it the data that was fed to the model? Do they own the intellectual property? If John puts in the same prompt I put in, and we get a very similar picture, do we both own the intellectual property? I don't know, right? Is it a derivative work? I mean, there wasn't an original work, but there's training data, so can you consider that this piece of art is a derivative of the training data? It's a big unknown.
Do we have one more question?
Yeah.
Anybody want one more question? Okay, all right.
So this is just, I was thinking about the deep fakes you mentioned, like it looks real, it feels real, it smells real, so there's no differentiating from, you can't tell if it's real or fake. And that's something that I would always ask when like these things started going on. I would ask my professors like, how do you stop this? Like how would you, and they would say there's no way. So I guess the way to do it is through prevention, right? Like, so my question is, what are companies like Dell doing to have these softwares we use to click through on your videos, you can, have a neat video? What are some like preventions that Dell is putting into place?
Well, if you look at the regulations, they're talking about watermarking AI generated works. And I think that goes so far as to say, hey, as a consumer of this work, I know that was fully or partially AI generated. On the flip side, I think we should watermark official content. If something comes from the White House, there should be a way that the public can authenticate that video coming from the White House is authentic. Maybe there's a code up on the right-hand side that plug into a governmental app that I can, and maybe it's blockchain or something, I can authenticate that. So watermarking AI generated works, I think we need to watermark official content. And think of another scenario, say Michael Dell says we're gonna buy this company, we're gonna lay off 10,000 people, and it damages our stock, and it's completely 100% fake. And it takes, X amount of time to debunk it. I think today with AI generated content, there are markers in the stream, within the image or within the video, that another AI can detect that an AI did. We have to fight AI with AI, essentially. But is it getting better every single day? Like even with what we see out of Sora, right? Is hey, the people in the background are funky, right? They're not walking exactly right, so you can tell it's fake. But if it doesn't get to the point where the human can't tell it's fake, then we have to have an AI detect that it's fake. But I think this is a societal problem that we're gonna have, is does it get to the point where you can't believe anything that you read, see, or hear on the internet? Is it authentic? And authenticating real content, I think, is the next step.
All right, thank you, everybody. I think we could go on for hours and hours. I'd like everybody to thank Craig Allen.